I knew something was wrong before he said my name. The room went quiet in that way that isn't polite. It's alert, like people sense a fall before it happens. I was crouched next to a junior analyst, showing him how to undo a scheduling error he'd made. An easy fix. I'd made it myself once. Twice. Honestly. Then I heard my name. Loud, flat, no effort to soften it. Rhea. Now. Not a question. A summons. I stood up, wiped my hands on my pants, and turned. He was standing there like he'd been placed on the floor just to be seen. Clean suit. Tight smile. The kind of confidence that comes from thinking no one can interrupt you. He didn't wait for privacy. Didn't ask what I was working on. He looked at me, then at the people around us, and spoke like he was reading a line he'd practiced. We've reviewed the structure. Your role is redundant. You're dead weight on payroll. The words landed harder because he said them calmly. Like this was obvious. Like everyone should agree. I didn't say anything. I felt my face do that thing where it goes blank on its own. I've always hated when my emotions show up before I'm ready for them. Pack your desk, he continued. Security will walk you out. Someone behind me inhaled too sharply. I heard it. I didn't turn around. That was my first conversation with the new chief executive officer. My name is Rhea Calder. I am 30 years old. I had worked here long enough to recognize the look in his eyes. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even curious. He was performing authority. Making sure the room understood who decided things now. I nodded once. Just once. Not agreement, not defiance. Something in between. I walked back to my desk while he stayed where he was. Already done with me. My hands moved on their own. Picking up a notebook, a mug, the small things that make a place feel temporary once you touch them. I didn't rush. I didn't explain. I could feel people watching, waiting for something louder. Nothing came. When the security guard stopped beside me, quiet and uncomfortable, I closed the box and stood. I followed him toward the exit, knowing this wasn't the end of the day. It was just the moment everything shifted. I sat down and started packing before anyone told me to. That part mattered to me. I pulled the bottom drawer open. Notebook first. Then the pen I kept stealing back from the conference room. My coffee mug was still warm. A voice floated over the cubicle wall. Rhea, I'm so sorry. It was quiet. Too quiet to mean comfort. I didn't look up. It's okay. I said, you didn't do this? There was a pause. Then footsteps retreating. That's how most of them handled it. Apology offered. Distance immediately restored. The security guard stood a few feet away. Hands folded in front of him like he was waiting for a bus. I knew him. Mark. He'd been here longer than I had. Take your time, he said. They said an hour, but yeah, I won't need it. I said. He nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't try to be nice. That almost helped. As I packed, I caught fragments of conversation around me. Not words, just tone. People pretending this wasn't happening while tracking every movement with their peripheral vision. I couldn't blame them. I'd done the same thing before. Survival teaches you bad habits. Mark cleared his throat. Ready, yeah? We walked together toward the elevators. No one clapped me on the shoulder. No one made eye contact. I wasn't angry at them. I was angry at how predictable it all was. In the lobby, my phone buzzed. A message from Human Resources. Exit paperwork. Mandatory interview. The word mandatory always makes people feel important. Mark stopped at the doors. I wish this wasn't how it went. He said, so do I. I said, but this is how he wanted it to look. Mark frowned. You don't seem surprised. I'm not. I said, I just thought he'd wait longer. The doors opened. Cold air rushed in. I stepped outside. Box in my arms. Weight digging into my forearm. 30 years old. Apparently old enough to be disposable. Apparently young enough to be underestimated. I walked to my car and set the box down gently. Like the things inside still belonged somewhere. I set the box on the kitchen table and didn't unpack it. Not right away. I stood there instead, staring at it like it might say something first. My phone buzzed. I didn't need to look to know who it was from. Human Resources. I checked anyway. Subject line in bold, exit process. Another message came in right after. Same sender. Mandatory interview scheduled for tomorrow at 10. Mandatory always sounds bigger than it is, like a threat dressed as procedure. I tossed the phone onto the couch. It buzzed again and again. I let it. An hour later, it rang. I watched it light up. Same department, same number. I didn't answer. The voicemail came through a minute after that. Calm voice. Too calm. Ria, we just want to close the loop. This will help everyone move forward. Help everyone. Right. I sat down. Elbows on my knees. Hands locked together. This was the part people mess up. They rush to explain. They try to sound reasonable. They hand over control because silence makes them nervous. I knew what they wanted. A reaction, something to document, something neat they could file away and call closure. I wasn't ready to give them that. Another message came in, please confirm. I typed 3 words. I'll be in touch. Then I deleted them. Silence wasn't about pride. It wasn't about shock either. It was about time. Time to let things unfold without me smoothing the edges. Time to see who talked when they thought I wasn't listening anymore. I poured a glass of water and stood by the sink. Phone face down on the counter. It vibrated once more, then stopped. That quiet felt heavier than the box on the table. But it was clean, intentional. For the first time since he said my name on that floor, I felt like I was choosing something instead of reacting. And I was very aware that once I broke that silence, there'd be no taking it back. A month before he fired me, I was sitting in a law office I'd driven past 100 times without noticing. I only noticed it that day because my hands wouldn't stop sweating. Take your time, the lawyer said. His name was Martin Hale, late 50s. Careful voice. The kind of man who pauses before every sentence like words cost money. I said, I wasn't. The documents were stacked neatly in front of me. Too neat. Family trust paperwork, voting rights, control language that made my stomach tighten the more I read it. 68%, Martin said, tapping one page. That's the threshold. Once this is signed, the company answers to you, I laughed once. Short, not amused. That makes it sound simple. It isn't, he said, but it is final. I stared at my name printed there. Full legal name. No nickname. No room to hide behind familiarity. This wasn't supposed to be me. I said. He didn't interrupt. That made it worse. My grandfather built the place. My mother kept it alive when everyone said sell. I grew up in those hallways. I was supposed to learn. Not. This. Martin folded his hands. You've been learning? Just not loudly? That hit harder than it should have. I picked up the pen, put it down, picked it up again. If I sign this, I said, I become exactly what I complain about. You become responsible. He said, there's a difference. People will think I planned it. I said, that I waited. You did wait, he said gently. You just didn't scheme. The room smelled faintly like old paper and burnt coffee. My head felt too full. I thought about the last board meeting I'd sat through quietly. Thought about how easy it was for people to talk over me when they thought I had no leverage. I don't want power, I said. No one who should have it ever does. Martin replied. They take it because not taking it costs more. That was when I realized what the decision actually was. Not yes or no. Action or neglect. I signed. The pen scratched louder than it should have. Martin gathered the papers immediately. Sliding them into a folder like this was something fragile. Effective today, he said. You're the majority shareholder. I didn't feel powerful. I felt heavy, like I'd just agreed to carry something that was going to bruise my shoulders for a long time. People keep asking me why I let it happen. Why I stood there and nodded like I agreed with him, like I believed him. The honest answer is I didn't trust myself yet. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Martin, the lawyer. I almost didn't pick up. You could intervene, he said after I told him what happened. No shock in his voice. Just information. You're within your rights. I know, I said. That's not the problem. Then what as I leaned back against the counter and stared at the box I still hadn't unpacked? I don't want to be her. I said, her who another executive who hides behind process. I said, another person who walks into rooms and thinks authority makes them right. Silence on the line. Not judgment. Consideration. You're afraid of becoming what you hate, he said. I'm afraid I already am, I said. Just quieter. That was the part I didn't say out loud to anyone else. Power changes people even when they swear it won't, especially when they swear it won't. If I stepped in too fast, it would look like ego. Like I'd been waiting for him to trip so I could pull rank. And worse, if I was wrong, if my instincts were off, then I wouldn't just be mistaken. I'd be destructive. I thought about the way he spoke to me. Calm. Certain. Like he'd already decided who I was. I wanted to be sure before I corrected him. I need to see what he does next. I told Martin, that comes with cost. He said, I know. I said, I'm already paying some of it. When the call ended, I stood there longer than I needed to, letting doubt have its say, letting fear run a lap or two. I didn't stop him because I needed to know whether this was about my pride or about the company. He moved fast after I was gone, faster than I expected. I heard about it through people who still texted me late at night when they weren't sure who was watching. One message said, whole team's gone by noon. Another said, he keeps saying efficiency like it's a magic word. I ran into Maya 3 days later at a coffee place near the river. She used to sit 2 rows behind me. Sharp, quiet, never complained. He told us it was necessary. She said, staring into her cup, that cutting people now would make us look strong later. Strong to who I asked? She shrugged. Investors? Twitter? Himself? I didn't tell her anything. I wanted to. The words sat right behind my teeth, but I swallowed them. That week, he sent out an all-hands email. Subject line in all caps. A new era. He talked about vision, brand refresh, streamlining. He didn't mention the names of the people who packed their desks that morning. Someone forwarded me a line from the email. We're trimming dead weight to move forward. I read it twice. Same phrase, same confidence. Martin called that night. He's acting like no one's checking his math. He said, that's because he thinks no one is. I said, are you still waiting? Yes. I said, I need him comfortable. Comfort makes people sloppy. It makes them loud. It makes them forget who might be paying attention. I watched from the outside while he announced changes like trophies, new titles, new hires, new photos on the website. Every move louder than the last, and every move told me the same thing. He thought he'd already won. I didn't start with drama. I started with spreadsheets. Numbers don't argue back. They just sit there and wait for you to notice what's wrong. Evan was the first to meet me. We'd worked together for years. Operations. The kind of guy who never raised his voice because he never had to. He slid a folder across the table. These are the projections he sent the board. He said, and these are the actuals. I flipped through. Revenue smoothed out, losses tucked into future quarters, optimism doing a lot of heavy lifting. This gap, I said. He explained it. Evan laughed once. No humor in it. He said it would correct itself. Next was Lila from Human Resources. She didn't want to meet in person. We talked on the phone while she sat in her car. They closed the cases. She said, not resolved. Closed. How many, I asked? She hesitated, more than I'm comfortable saying out loud. Do you have copies? Yes, she said. And before you ask, I won't ask. I said, but I need them. Silence. Then, I'll send what I have by the end of the week. My dining table was covered in paper, complaints stamped received and never answered. Maintenance requests marked urgent and ignored. Equipment budgets cut while marketing ballooned past $200,000 for a rebrand no one asked for. Martin came by one evening. He didn't sit. If any of this is wrong, he said, you don't just lose leverage, you lose credibility. I know, I said. And once you move, he added, there's no pulling it back. I know, I said again. When he left, I stayed up late, double-checking every number, every date, every signature. My hands shook, not from fear of being caught, but from the possibility that I might be right. No one spoke when I walked in. That was the first thing I noticed. The new CEO was already there, leaning back like he owned the air. A few board members looked confused. One looked annoyed. Martin sat near the end, hands folded, face unreadable. Are we starting? The CEO said. Because I have another meeting. I didn't sit where I was supposed to. I took the chair at the head of the table. It creaked, loud enough to be rude. We are starting, I said. He smiled at me then. The kind you give someone you think wandered into the wrong room. I don't think you're on the agenda. I am. I said, "You just didn't know it." Martin slid a folder across the table. Thick, clean, final. Before we continue, I said, "I need to clarify something. 1 month ago, I became the majority shareholder of this company. 68% of voting control. Through a family trust, someone inhaled sharply. Papers shifted. No one reached for their phone. That's not possible, like the CEO said. His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. That would have triggered, it didn't. Martin said, and it's valid. I watched the CEO lean forward, just slightly. The room tilted with him. I wasn't informed. One board member said, "You weren't required to be," I said. "But you are now." Silence again. He tried to laugh it off. "This feels like a misunderstanding." "It isn't," I said. "And I didn't come here to surprise anyone. I came to review leadership. That's not how this works." He said. "It is," I said. "When you own the votes." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I laid the first document on the table, financials. Then the second, human resources summaries. Then operations, red. I said, "Then we'll talk." No one interrupted. Not because they were polite, because they were calculating. The CEO finally looked at me like I was real. Not young, not mistaken, real. "You planned this," he said. "No," I said. "I prepared for it." That difference mattered more than he understood. No one rushed to speak. That told me everything. The board members read in silence. Pages turning slowly. The CEO leaned back again, arms crossed. Like posture alone could keep things in place. "This is selective," he said finally. "You're pulling snapshots and calling it a pattern." "It is a pattern," I said. "You just didn't expect anyone to line it up." He pointed at the financials. Those projections were standard, conservative. Even conservative doesn't hide losses. I said, and it doesn't push them into quarters you won't be accountable for. One of the board members cleared her throat. "These numbers don't match what we approved." "They would have," he said quickly. "If you'd let me finish the rollout." Another voice joined in. Older, tired. "Why weren't we informed about the human resources closures?" He didn't answer right away. That pause cost him more than anything else. "Those were handled internally," he said, "to avoid unnecessary exposure." "You mean liability?" I said, "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." He turned to the board. Palms up. "This is personal." She's angry. She's twisting process into accusation. I didn't interrupt. I waited. He kept talking. That was the mistake. The company needs decisive leadership. He said, not hesitation, not sentiment. "That's interesting." One board member said, "Tapping the papers, because what I'm seeing here looks like negligence." Another added, "And risk, significant risk." The room shifted then. Subtle, but irreversible. I leaned forward. "This isn't about tone or preference, it's about duty. You have an obligation to act once you know." He looked at me sharply. "You can't seriously be considering this." "I already have," I said. Martin slid the final document forward. "There's a motion on the table." The board chair hesitated. "We need a second." "I don't," I said. "As majority shareholder, I'm calling the vote." No one objected. That silence was the vote before the vote. "In favor of removal," I said. Effective immediately, one by one. Heads nodded. Not eagerly, not dramatically, just enough. The chair exhaled. The motion passes. The CEO stood so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You'll regret this," he said. "You have no idea what you're doing." I met his eyes. "I do. That's why this is happening." He grabbed his jacket and left without another word. The door closed behind him. Final. Ordinary. The board chair looked at me. What happens next? I gathered my papers. "Now," I said. "We clean up what he rushed through. No applause, no victory speech. Just work waiting to be done." They asked me if I wanted the corner office. Someone from facilities. Careful voice. Clipboard hugged to his chest. "Not yet." I said, "Maybe never." He blinked. Wrote it down anyway. I didn't disappear into meetings. I went back to the floor. Same places. Same faces. Some people nodded. Some didn't. Fair. I called a town hall that afternoon. No slides, no script. "I owe you clarity," I said. "Not spin." A hand went up. Are the layoffs final? Some were rushed. I said, we're reviewing them. If we made a mistake, we'll own it. Another voice. Sharper. What about the complaints that got buried? They're reopened. I said, all of them. Independently. If you filed one, you'll hear from someone who doesn't report to me. Silence. Then a few exhales. That mattered more than applause. I met with Lila from Human Resources later. She didn't sit. I'll stay. She said, if you mean what you said. I do. I said, and if I stop meaning it, you should leave. She smiled once. Tired. Deal. We froze executive bonuses. All of them. Redirected funds to fix equipment that had been flagged for months. One line item alone freed up $200,000. It paid for repairs and back overtime. People noticed in their paychecks. They always do. At the end of the week, Martin stopped by. You won't win everyone back. He said, I'm not trying to. I said, I'm trying to be consistent. That's the lesson I learned the hard way. Power doesn't fix things by existing. It fixes things by showing up the same way every day, even when it's inconvenient. Especially then. I kept my desk where it was. Third row, near the noise. When someone asked why, I said, if I can't hear what breaks, I can't fix it. I'm not pretending this is finished. It isn't. I chose work over satisfaction, repair over victory. If you've been watching this unfold, stick around. Say what you'd protect first if the choice landed on your desk. Share it below. Let's talk about building something that holds